You're listening to the Natural Mother Podcast. I'm Jessica, founder of naturalmothernetwork.com.
And I'm Candace, a birth and postpartum doula. We're sisters and moms who believe all mothers deserve a doula's support beyond just pregnancy and birth.
Consider us your go-to source for information, encouragement, and community.
Welcome to the podcast today, everybody. This is your host, Candace. I'm here with Betty. She's going to tell us her birth stories and her motherhood journey since her birth stories. Welcome to the podcast today, Betty.
Thank you so much for having me, Candace.
I am so excited to hear what you have to tell us. So start with just telling us a little bit about yourself and your family.
Yeah, so my name is Betty Morin, and I live in rural Utah, just outside of Park City in a little city called Francis. And I have two boys. One is 6 and one is 4. And my husband and I also own a restaurant. Yeah, that's a little bit about, me and my home life. I also teach yoga and I teach meditation tools. That's kind of some of the stuff that I do to just be more myself in the world, because one of my biggest fears of becoming a mom was losing myself and identifying only as a mother.
Right.
So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Well, that's a smart perspective anyway, because I think in an opposite way, I didn't really have that fear. I expected to lose myself, I guess, and planned on it and therefore let it happen. And then, that didn't work out either. So I think that it's smart to go into it and go, how do I keep pieces of myself that are not a mother? And what do I do to nurture that? Obviously, we're going to go into your whole entire story, but that's a good point to make, and one worth not skipping over, I think.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. So let's start with your first pregnancy. Was it easy to get pregnant? Did you try for a long time? That kind of background.
Yeah. So it was actually really funny when my husband and I met, we sort of bonded over the fact that neither of us wanted to be parents, which was pretty hilarious, especially as I got older and all of a sudden that biological clock started ticking. It was the weirdest experience for me. Then I had to go to him, and it was actually before we got married that I went to him, and I was like, so the weirdest thing is happening. I think I would like to be a mom. And he was like, all right, I need a little time for that one. I was like, okay, no problem.
Yeah.
But it was really cool. We came to this space that it was like, no, it would actually be really amazing to have a family. And so after we got married, we just decided, well, I would get off of birth control. And if we got pregnant, we got pregnant. We actually did get pregnant very soon after we got married, and I had a miscarriage. Which actually, this seems very, very strange to say, but it was actually the most amazing gift that I could have ever been given. When I found out that I was pregnant, I went, oh no. Oh no. This actually is happening. I don't think I'm ready.
Yeah.
A couple of weeks later, before we could even go in and get the ultrasound and all of that stuff and hear the baby's heartbeat, all of the things, right?
Yeah.
I was teaching a yoga class and I put everyone into a twist, and I didn't do the twist myself, right? Because I'm pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden I literally felt something dislodge in my body.
Oh, wow.
And I just had this thought, and I was like, I'm not pregnant any longer. That's really interesting. And I went home and I looked at my husband and I was like, so I'm not pregnant anymore. And he was like, what are you talking about? And I was like, I felt something dislodge from my womb. I am no longer carrying a child. And he thought I was crazy, which is fair. And then later that night, my body just got rid of whatever had been inside of it. What was really, really amazing is that just a few days prior to that, I had started getting excited. And I was like, okay, we are going to have a family and we're having a baby. And I started to really get comfortable with the idea.
Yeah.
And so definitely after the miscarriage occurred, there was a sense of loss there.
Yeah.
But there was more a sense of relief that I had realized that this was actually something that I wanted. I was so grateful to have been able to have that experience, because there was then no doubt in my mind that having a family with this man was what I wanted. But also, so many women have this experience, right? As just a woman who walks this earth, I'm really, really grateful that when I talk to my friends about this or other women about these stories, that I have the opportunity to bring it up.
Right.
Right. To give someone else a safe space to tell their story and to be able to have it be okay.
Right.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
All the hard things that I've been through in that way, but not exactly. I haven't had a miscarriage, but the hard things in becoming a mother or being a mother or giving birth or anything have helped me just have a lot more compassion for
Yes.
everyone else, you know?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Right. And then it becomes really, really easy to have a conversation like this with you.
Yeah.
Where, you know, I can be open because I've gotten to share tidbits or portions or complete stories of all of this in such safe spaces with other women who have compassion and empathy.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's why we do this, because we know that no matter how unique and alone we feel, we're not. And there's somebody out there who's felt those same feelings, and there's somebody out there who's living that same story right now, and giving them somewhere to feel heard and seen, and to give you that space too. That's what we're doing here. And that's why we're here. So it's amazing that, to me, that you're able to take a negative experience like a miscarriage and find the silver lining in it.
I was like, oh, this was actually a gift from God.
Wow.
Like, now I know without a doubt.
Yeah.
That the next time this happens,
yeah,
it's awesome. And it's exactly what it needs to be.
Not getting what we want really shows us what we want.
Exactly. And it never really looks the way that I expect it to look, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's birth or a job or my children's behavior or whatever it is, right? Like,
exactly.
Yeah. It never looks the way I think it ought to, but
right.
But if I'm willing to just sit with it and be with it and let it be okay, it works out 1,000 times more amazingly and magically than I could have ever imagined. Right.
Right. Or at least we can learn the lessons and see the silver linings. And at least if we haven't learned one thing from becoming mothers, it's definitely that we are not really in control.
100%. Preach, Candace. Yes.
And parenting is nothing like what I thought it would be like. And in that way, marriage is nothing like what I thought it would be like. And life really isn't either, you know, and all my best laid plans twist and turn on me. And I think that's part of the story, you know, that's part of why we're here. How long did it take for you to get pregnant again?
Yeah. So again, we just sort of left it up to the universe. So then I got pregnant in October of 2013. And then I had my baby in January. Lord have mercy. No, I did not have my baby in January. I had him in June.
Okay.
June.
Yeah.
Of 2014.
Right.
The pregnancy itself, it was my first time being pregnant, right? So I had no idea really what to expect. It turns out that I had preeclampsia, which was completely like, it went undiagnosed until like 39 weeks because the protein levels in my urine never were elevated, but I had a whole bunch of other symptoms. So, you know, hindsight being 2020, probably if I had had my second pregnancy first, I would have known that there were some serious problems.
Just towards the end of your pregnancy, or were you feeling that something was up before then?
Yeah, it was long before then. My body was just like retaining water, and I was swelling, and like I was just very, very uncomfortable. And I just assumed that that's what happens when you grow a being inside of you. But then I found out that it isn't, you know, and it's a really, really weird situation to be in, to be growing something that's killing you. I had an immense amount of resentment to my first child after he was born.
Yeah.
In fact, I think I actually said to someone after he was delivered, "Oh my God, this child's tried to kill me."
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he and I had a tough start. My sweet little Charles, who I knew his name actually before he was ever conceived. I had told my husband what the name of our first child was. And he was like, "Well, what if it isn't a boy?" And I said, I don't know, because that is who our first child is. I don't know what happens if it's not a boy. Anyway, so it was a really, really interesting experience. It was a 36-hour labor. He was stuck in my birth canal and had to be vacuumed out.
Yeah.
Like the suction cuppy vacuumy thingy. I had an epidural, though that was not my plan. You know, I really didn't want any medical intervention. I had kind of fought with my husband a little bit about even going to a hospital. I wanted to be in a birth center. But I'm also a really, really small human being. And so I was very, very grateful that he had put his foot down. I was also very grateful that we had made a compromise, that we had a doula. She was actually in midwifery training. That was a really, really wonderful compromise, in that I felt like I had a team behind me, and then we also had our medical team, and we were all doing the best we could. You know, hindsight being what it is, it would have been probably a much healthier choice to choose a C-section. But I didn't make that choice. I had an idea of what it needed to look like. And even doing the epidural just made me so angry. I really, really wish that I could have let that go for the good of everyone in the room. So my husband and I did like a birthing class, like through our local hospital, which was like super informative. And we like learned CPR and like all those things. And like we read a birthing book and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then with our doula, she actually came to our home and like did like the breathing exercises with us and talked about like the different positions that we could be in, and like where my husband ought to like put pressure on my back in order to like help with the pain. And so like those types of things, right?
So you were feeling really prepared going in, and you just had an idea of how this was going to go. So tell us how the idea of how you wanted it to go. What was that like?
Well, you know, I had my like birth binder, and my doctor knew that I wanted to have a natural birth and that I wanted very little medical intervention. You know, I brought my essential oils and my diffuser to the hospital.
Did you have the flameless candles too?
I did not have flameless candles.
The line there.
But yeah, you know, it was just really interesting. Like I had read, oh goodness, what's her name? Like the midwife of all midwives.
Ina May.
Yes, I had read her book, and it scared the living crap out of me for any medical intervention. And so I think that a lot of my rigidity came from, I am a person who does things in a more natural way. It's just sort of how I have always lived. It's not so much that I have a distrust of the medical field or Western medicine. Mm-hmm. I think that it certainly has a time and a place.
Right.
And I'm very, very grateful for it. But I also know that for centuries, women have been giving birth. If I had not had medical intervention, I would have hemorrhaged to death.
It has a time and a place, but I relate a lot to your story. I know that we don't know each other, but in my first pregnancy, I had a plan, and I had an idea, and I had been researching natural birth for many years already. And so I figured, of course I will have what I want. Of course I will, because I know so much. Yeah. It's funny now. Yeah. But it so didn't go that way. So I know. And then there are people who get really tied to a natural birth, and they do get their smooth natural birth. And so for a long time, I had some resentment, just why not me? Like, why did it work out for me? This is so unfair. Like, oh my
gosh, totally. Yeah. When they had to induce me, I lost it. Absolutely lost it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I have to say, I am eternally grateful that I did not have to be induced with my second child.
Yeah.
Pitocin totally kicked my butt.
Oh yeah. Pitocin kicks everyone's butt. It's not a fun thing.
It is not.
No. So I always say that the reason that birth matters and the reason that the way your birth goes matters is because you're going to start motherhood feeling that way. So when you're starting motherhood feeling devastated and ripped off and robbed and like your baby is trying to kill you, it's not pretty that way. It's not fun. So tell us a little bit about let's go with how did the birth end up going, like when the baby was actually born, and then we'll go from there.
My son, after he was born, was a 0 on the APGAR scale. I did not understand what was occurring because I was having my own death experience.
Right.
And our doula literally looked at my husband and said, you need to go be with your son. It might be all you get. And I was really, really grateful because no one allowed me to know that that was occurring.
Yeah.
Probably because if I had known that that was occurring, it would have created a whole bunch more weirdness that I couldn't have handled. Right. So I was hemorrhaging, my vitals were going down, and my husband had to choose between going and spending time with his child, who may or may not survive, or his wife. And it was really hard. And I remember looking at the nurse and just saying, I really don't want anything to do with this child right now.
Yeah.
And her holding so much love for me.
Yeah.
And just saying, that's okay. You don't have to. Even though she knew what was going on and I had no idea.
Right. But it's really hard to be on the edge of your very survival and be able to think about your baby or care one way or another. You're hanging on by a thread, and it's a really, really scary place. And I totally get that. Like, you can't even think about it. Like,
right.
You're like, I'm trying not to die right now. And nothing else matters in the world besides that at the moment, you know?
And on top of that, I had this idea of what it was supposed to look like that had been completely shattered.
Right.
Right. That I was holding on to so tightly.
Right. So without a formal diagnosis, I would assume you have some PTSD from that experience.
Yeah, I would probably guess you're right. And actually, to the point that every time I would pass the hospital where my child was born, I would like flip. And interestingly enough, I actually ended up working with an energy worker and then a shaman in order to like clear it.
Yeah.
So that now when I pass that place, there's nothing. There is no hate, there's no animosity, there's no joy either. But it's now neutralized. And I'm so grateful, right? Like I said, there's nothing wrong with Western medicine, but I'm also really, really grateful for those other modalities.
Yeah.
That I know, because I've experienced it, can move whatever the energetic hook is.
Right.
To the experience or the place or the emotion.
Yep. I think just having all the different options available to us is really what's important.
Right.
We're all different. So
yep.
Okay. So your baby was born and obviously not breathing. I've seen a couple of births where babies are born with about a 0 or maybe a 1 APGAR, and it's horrific. It's traumatizing to be the doula in the room.
I can only imagine.
Yeah, it's not awesome. So they obviously take your baby and whisk him away and start working on him to get him to come around. And so did that work, or did they whisk him off to the NICU? Like, what happened?
No, it worked. There was actually not a NICU in our hospital.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
So that wasn't even a possibility, but yeah, it worked. I mean, whatever it is that they did
worked.
He was alive.
But it sounds like he came around. Otherwise they would have been arranging life flight actually from your hospital because he doesn't have a NICU. So So he probably started breathing and he probably started crying, and this was all happening in the room with you.
No.
Right? No, they took him out of your room.
Yeah,
that's intense. So he leaves and you're hemorrhaging with your doula.
Yes.
And your husband left with the baby. So then tell us how that part resolves.
Honestly, I don't remember. Like, I don't remember. All I remember is at one point coming to, and the nurse who had been there for the birth, who actually also taught the class that we went to. So I already felt really, really comfortable around her.
Yeah.
All I remember is just having an immense amount of animosity. And also an immense amount of guilt for feeling so much animosity. and and so much sadness that like I didn't get to like hold him, but also so much relief that like I didn't have to deal with it at the moment. It was such a weird experience.
Yeah.
She just told me, she was like, when you're ready, you're ready. He's fine. You're fine. Sleep for a few minutes.
Yeah.
Like, it's okay.
Yep.
And then when I did actually like meet him, you know, it wasn't love at first sight, Candace.
Yeah.
You know, it was like, oh my God, like,
what just happened?
What just happened? And like, now you're going to eat from me?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not done.
I just got hit by a train, nearly drowned, and now I have a human who thinks I'm its mother.
Now, like, I'm responsible for you. Right. And that's the thing is like, you know, my kid and I didn't get skin to skin. I did have an immense amount of resentment and animosity. I also felt stronger than I've ever felt before.
Yeah.
And I was like, holy crap. I just gave birth. I was on the verge of dying and I'm still alive. Plus, it was the most beautiful full moon I've ever seen.
Oh.
It was one of those like super moons.
Yeah.
So like it was all the emotions and all the feelings and all the experiences all at once.
Yes.
And
it's really hard to hold space for when you're not used to that. Like normally in our lives, we have a hard thing happen, but we're not also seeing the joy at the moment necessarily. Yeah. It's a really weird place. I love how you're describing it. And I feel like I've so been there. So yeah, I know there'll be other women that listen that have also been there or don't understand at all, but they'll hear it from us. But I do. Yes, I totally get it. So how many days did you stay in the hospital and how was that recovery? Because when a woman hemorrhages, not only do you have to recover from giving birth, but there's this whole other level where your body has to replenish blood supply and you're so much more exhausted than you would be if you hadn't hemorrhaged. So tell us a little bit about that, the recent aftermath of that birth.
Yeah. So we were in the hospital actually for 5 days because my child also just lost an immense amount of weight. So he was born at 5 pounds. My body and he did not get along very well. So, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. So he was only 5 pounds when he was born. And then he actually lost a pound in the hospital.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So we started supplementing with formula right away, which again, right? Not in my plan. That was not in my binder.
Yeah.
He was supposed to just eat from his mother and we were you know, just one more layer.
Yeah.
But then, you know, like it was working and I remember being absolutely terrified to come home.
Yeah.
Because I was like, wait, the nurses come and like remind me to feed my kid. Wait, someone else is changing this diaper.
Yep.
Wait, I still just feel like I can't walk.
Yeah.
Like just all the things, you know, and my husband couldn't wait to get home. And I was like, what in the hell is your problem? We have help here, dude.
Yep.
But yeah, it was physically it was a really, really slow recovery.
Yeah.
I mean, physically, I didn't feel like I had recovered until like probably a year and a half after he was born.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you know, even for as like horrific as the birth was, as disdainful as I felt toward this little tiny human that needed me, he and I still have an amazing relationship now.
Yeah.
You know, even though it was actually like the only moments that I felt at all okay were the moments when he was sleeping.
Yeah.
You know, he would wake up and it was just panic. I'd be like, I don't know what to do with you.
Yeah.
I don't know what to do with you. Like literally.
Right. It's terrifying.
It is. It's totally terrifying. My mom lived with us for a couple months because I was just so scared. I remember when he was 3 months old, my sister came to visit. She has an older daughter. She and I went somewhere and I just looked at her and I said, okay, I need you to tell me the absolute truth about this. is there a loophole that is a return policy? And she was like, what are you talking about? I was like, I don't think this was the right choice.
Yeah.
Is like, did I miss something in this agreement?
Yeah.
And she was like, no, there isn't one. And I was like, okay, I just needed to know, like, for 100% that there is not a return policy. And she was like, I felt that way too, but I was always way too scared to ask someone.
Yes.
So good job. Like, way to ask. I was like, thank you. I just really needed to know if God would take it back.
Yeah.
Like, beyond a shadow of a doubt, I needed to know.
Yeah. And your baby was a month old or so?
He was 3 months old.
Oh yeah.
And so then at that point I was like, all right, we're in this for the long haul, man. I guess I better pull my head out of my ass and start being your mom.
Yeah.
And I shared that story. I was invited to like this mom's group on Facebook by one of my other friends. And that was another thing, is I was really scared. Like, I didn't know any women with children.
Yeah.
Who were my age. Like, yeah. I didn't have a community even of moms. And I met a few of these other moms, and like 6 or 7 of us have remained very, very close. And I remember like the second time meeting these ladies, I shared that story in the changing room of our local swimming pool. and then instantly I was like, oh my God, what did I just do? Like, these women are going to think I'm totally crazy. And I found out a few months later that one of the women who had joined us that day had some like very, very severe postpartum depression. And she told me a few months later, she was like, the minute you shared that story, I knew that we were going to be really good friends because you got it.
Yeah.
And I didn't even need to tell you that it was like my first time out of my house since my kid was born, that I couldn't function. But like, I knew that A, it was going to be okay, and B, that you and I would be friends.
Yeah. See how powerful that is?
Right?
Yeah, it's definitely not just you. And I'm so happy that you were able to share and help that mom. And right now you're sharing and helping who knows how many moms,
Yeah.
It's really,
well, and that's my hope, right? Is like that we can all like, we're so siloed.
yeah.
Right? Like, we're all supposed to like do this on our own. And that's not how humans have raised children. For like, this is a very new way of raising children.
Yeah.
Than, people even 100 years ago.
This COVID that's separating us more, so
even
I
more.
At least we have these digital online ways of connecting, because without that, what would be happening in the world right now? But we have
and I have to say, I'm so grateful that I have my 2 little humans and my husband, because I have been able to get hugs and give hugs.
Yep.
And see people face to face, right? Because we are a family.
Yeah.
And how sad would that be, especially right now?
Yeah.
If that didn't exist for me. But I also think that there's something else that we rarely talk about as moms that was really hard for me. And that was like, and you kind of touched on this, Candace, with like the human dignity and not being able to get up and use the restroom when you wanted to. But like, so I had my children early 30s, I guess. All of a sudden, I wasn't working. So I wasn't like financially giving to our family, right?
Yeah.
Which was very, very awkward. It's just been recently that I've like realized that that's okay. My oldest kid is 6. By recently, I mean within the last 2 weeks. I don't mean like 6 months ago. I mean like ridiculously recently. I was really grieving the loss of my previous life.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was grieving the loss of friendships that I know no longer really served me, because I was no longer in the place in life as these friends.
Yeah.
I was grieving the loss of just being able to look at my husband and be like, hey, let's go out tonight and shoot some pool.
Yeah.
But I think that that's something that we really overlook.
Yeah.
Is that it's okay to be sad
Yeah.
that your life has been completely turned upside down.
Yeah.
Like that is okay as a new mom. And I remember feeling so guilty for grieving because I knew that there were women out there who couldn't get pregnant and that's all they ever wanted was to be a mom.
Right.
Like the layers of guilt that I compounded on myself were so ridiculous.
We're going to take a quick break from today's episode to tell you about Oak Meadow. Every parent wants their child to be inspired at school, but traditional and public school is not for everyone. If we've learned anything over the past year with this pandemic, it's that parents need more options. Since 1975, Oak Meadow has provided flexible, progressive education for independent learners. Today, Oak Meadow's curriculum is used by thousands of families all over the world. A comprehensive curriculum for every learner, kindergarten through 12th grade, learn independently or enroll in Oak Meadow's accredited distance learning school. If school is a struggle, Oak Meadow can help. Find everything that you need to know about their teachers, curriculum, and distance learning programs at oakmeadow.com. Now back to the show.
Yes, totally. And then we feel bad for feeling bad. And then
Yes.
it just gets worse and heavier.
I mean, I remember looking at my husband and being like, I know I'm crazy and I can't stop it.
Yeah.
Like I can see it and I don't know how to stop the crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It was really, really hard for my husband and I for like the first 5 years of my oldest child's life. So after the birth of my first child, I vowed I would not have a second child because it was so horrific. And then I don't know about you, but I'm pretty sure that like biologically we just get amnesia as women.
Yeah, I think
because then at some point we're like, let's have another baby. Like what?
Well, I think for me, it maybe was my stubbornness. No, that wasn't supposed to happen that way. I can still have the birth I want. I can still do it. I know that I wasn't wrong in wanting A, B, C, and D. And I'm a stubborn cookie. You know, it did eventually work out, but not until the third child. So, but yeah, it was hefty. And I knew I wanted to have more than one. How far after your first birth did you get help, you said, from an energy worker and a shaman to get into a good place in your head where you could move forward? Like how far after the birth was that?
I called a dear, dear friend of mine, probably right around the time I asked about the return policy. And she is an energy worker. She lives in Canada. And I had worked with her professionally before my child was born. And so I called her and I was like, all right, I need some help. You know, this is what occurred. I need to give myself and my child what I needed in the moment. So that's what she and I worked on, was that.
Yeah.
And in that period of time, like through that session, I literally like rewrote the birth story for an emergency C-section.
Yeah.
And it was a huge weight that was lifted off. You know, of like, okay, cool. Like I just gave Charles and I what we needed. It wasn't what I wanted, but it really like, this is what we needed in that moment. And that was an amazingly liberating experience that I really actually think brought Charles and I much, much closer together. The shaman, though, I didn't work with her until a year after the birth of our second child.
Oh, wow.
And Joseph's story is completely different. You know, for him, we worked with the same doula, and we were her very last doula clients before she became a midwife. And it was so magical to work with her again.
Yeah.
My previous OBGYN, their practice ended halfway through my pregnancy with Joseph.
Uh-huh.
So then I was able to choose between two doctors that I wasn't too excited about.
Yeah.
But I made a choice. And sorry, I'm laughing because if I don't laugh, I will just cry. So then when Joseph was born, it was when another physician was coming on to this particular team. And it was their first, it was the first introduction, like weekend shift that this person had worked.
Oh boy.
And there was no other doctor on call.
Right.
So like this doctor was literally just like baptism by fire.
Right.
But that doesn't excuse the fact that I was very much mistreated.
Right.
And so was my child.
Yeah. So you had a plan going into this second birth.
Actually didn't have a plan going into the second birth.
Yeah.
I had no plan. My only plan was that I was going to do what seemed best.
Yeah.
And so because it had taken me so long to dilate with my first child, and actually even with the Pitocin, it was still 36 hours of birth. Like it was insane. So with the second child, I just let it all go. And I was like, it's okay. It's going to look however it's going to look.
Right.
Which also wasn't pretty. So, I don't know. Have a plan, don't have a plan. It's still going to be whatever it is.
Exactly. So true.
So I went into labor like in the middle of the night-ish on like the 22nd, something like that. Yeah.
So labor started on its own. You did not.
Yeah, it started on its own.
Great.
Thinking back, like I think I asked someone like, how did you induce labor? And they said that they pumped. So I think I did that. I think I turned my pump on and just like pumped just to see what would happen. Hindsight, that was a dumb idea. Because maybe if I hadn't done that, this doctor would not have been the doctor to deliver my baby. I don't know. But so, yeah, I did. I tried that just to see if it would work. Because, I'm not going to like take castor oil or anything and like dehydrate my body before I even begin. So, which also could be an old wives' tale. I have no idea. Anyway, so I remember waking up in the middle of the night and I was like, oh, I think I'm in labor. This feels a lot different than the Pitocin. And so I like got in the bathtub and I called my doula and I was like, so I think I'm in labor. And she's like, so what does that mean? And I was like, I don't know, my body's like squeezing and then like, not, and I'm uncomfortable. And she's like, all right, yeah, that sounds like labor. So she's like, all right, well, it sounds like you're in pretty early stages. I'll be up in like 2 hours, but if it seems like I need to come up sooner, let me know. It's like, okay.
Yeah.
And it was fine. Like it was totally fine. My husband woke up and he went outside and it was the peak of the Orionid meteor shower. And so anyway, like it was just, it was really, really cool. Like that part was super sweet. Like it was a very sweet, like lovely thing. Like he came in and we had a name for this child and it just wasn't really feeling right to me. And he's like, the Orionid meteor showers are so beautiful tonight. I was like, oh, that's so awesome. Isn't that cool that we had like a supermoon baby and now we're having like an Orionid meteor shower baby?
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, that is cool. And then my doula got here and we just kind of like mulled around and I ate a nice, yummy breakfast and, and then around like 11 a.m., I was like, I think I would just feel better. Maybe it was like 1 p.m. I have no idea. Let's just be honest. Like, I think I would just feel better just being at the hospital.
Yeah.
Like, I think that would just feel easier to me. And they were like, okay, well, let's go. So we did. And so, yeah, like I just sat in the bath at the hospital, Yeah. That was simple. And then I met the doctor. And so, I was there with a team, right? I have my husband, my mother, my doula, and then my doula's doula in training.
Okay. Yeah.
And I did have a male doctor. And he walked in the room and like introduced himself and whatever. He like hid in the corner.
Huh.
Like he literally, like he made himself so tiny in the corner. And I was like, you're the doctor. What are you doing? He was on call, but he needed to go take a nap because he'd been da-da-da. Like he made it all about himself. It was really annoying.
Yeah.
And after he left, I was like, is he afraid of me? And like, I was like, I don't understand what just happened. Like, I'm not on an epidural yet. I'm pretty lucid. Like, what was that? They went to get an IV in me. I told her, please don't put it where they were going to put it. She did anyway. I felt everything tense, right? Like, and I was just like, God damn it.
Yeah.
I have worked so hard to stay so calm. Ooh, so I fired the nurse.
Good.
I let and just so you know, moms, you can fire your nurses.
I always tell
you can look at someone and say, that person never gets to come in my room again.
Yeah.
Like, please do that. Like, if you feel like that is not the right fit for you, tell someone.
Yeah.
I am dead serious. The number of women I have talked to who didn't know that that was an option, like, oh my gosh, please do it. And I've done it for more than just births, let me tell you. So anyway, super long story short, I got myself relaxed again, you know, the diffusers. This time we brought crystals because, hey, why not? I got in the tub, got myself relaxed. And then finally, when I felt like much more relaxed, I was like, all right, it's time for the epidural because I just want to get this show on the road. And I know that my body responds to an epidural, right? Like,
yeah.
And I know that I can still push, right? Like, I know those things now. So let's do that. And so that's what we did.
So did it feel more positive? Like the first time you got
well,
you said you were upset about it, and this time
this time it was fine. I was like, nope, I'm good with it. Like, I'm going with my gut. This is fine.
Yeah.
So the next thing that I did to go with my gut is I was like, I looked at my doula and I was like, I think it would be the wisest move to just break my water. Like, I really didn't want my kid to sit in my birth canal and have him have a 0 on the APGAR scale, right?
So you're trying to...
So I was like, what's the quickest possible way to get this child out of my body? So I'm kind of like on the other side of all of that, right?
Yeah.
So I asked the doctor to please break my water because he's the only person who can, and he doesn't do it.
Oh.
He thought he did, but he didn't. And I told him that. I said, you didn't break my water. Oh, yes, I did. I'm the medical professional. Blah, blah, blah. This is when I was like, shit, I should not have gotten the epidural because now I can't just walk out to the parking lot and have this baby and walk into the ER.
Yeah.
Damn it. So, because that was like, oh no, this is not going to go well between he and I.
Yeah.
My nurse ever so kindly broke my water.
Oh, yeah.
While checking my cervix. And I was so grateful because I knew it's what, like, I was just going with my gut. I was like, this is what I think needs to happen, you know? And it was such a more empowering experience. So then I was ready. The baby was in my birth canal coming out. I was told to close my fucking legs.
What?
Until the doctor arrived.
I've heard of this and I've never firsthand, you know?
Uh-huh. The pain in my pelvis was so searing.
Yeah.
When he was born, his umbilical cord was wrapped around his neck. And instead of just slipping his neck out of the umbilical cord, the doctor cut the umbilical cord. They had to resuscitate him, which blew holes in his lungs. They thought that he had an infection, which he didn't have. So they sent him, because of the lungs and the supposed infection, they called an ambulance and sent him to a NICU, and they would not send me with him.
So more trauma.
More trauma.
So
yep.
If you could go back and have your magic wand in that moment, cords around his neck, he comes out, maybe needs a little help breathing, but you would have preferred, of course, that they slip the cord over his head and give him a minute with the umbilical cord still pulsing, still giving him oxygen, and see then if he came around. And instead they didn't do that. They were much more jumpy, right?
Correct. And I was given an episiotomy that I did not need. And sewn up in like a 1960s fashion, not, a 2016 fashion.
Wow. This new sounds very nervous. Very nervous. So So, and then what I don't want to skip over what else you said. And I've heard of this happening before as well to a friend of mine, that sometimes when they resuscitate the baby, they put too much pressure.
That's exactly what happened.
And the lungs, for lack of a better word, kind of burst.
Yeah, exactly.
It gets air in between their lung and the sac around the lung. And that's called a pneumothorax, right? I'm pretty sure.
I think so.
Yeah. So then that requires some recovery on your baby's part, which was
Yes.
by the doctors,
Yes,
the nurses, or whoever it is that's resuscitating. And then, whatever. This is unfair.
So I keep saying, I have a tagline. I am really good at a lot of things. Birth is not one of them.
Yeah.
One of the beautiful things though that occurred. So I had told my husband like 2 hours before this child was born, I said, he needs a new name. And I'm giving birth. You need to name this kid. My husband's eyes got as big as saucers. What are you talking about? So when it became clear that they were taking him to a NICU, he came in and he said, we have to name our child before we leave. Like, he can't leave here without a name. I can't take him to another place and not know his name. And I was like, okay, then what's his name? And he said, well, the nurse who I feel like had the most care and love and expertise to help our child, her name was Josephine. Can we name him Joseph Orion?
Oh.
And that's his name. And later we realized that Joseph's actually a family name for both of us. But that wasn't even like
on the radar
part of it in the beginning.
Wow. Yeah.
But
so perfect.
Yeah. And while NICU was its own special form of torture, I felt so grateful that my baby wasn't in there because he was premature. He wasn't in there. He was in there to heal from a horrific experience.
Yeah.
But NICU is a really weird place.
Yeah.
Like, it almost feels like, I likened it to like being in space, right? Like, you go in and like you have to clean and then you go through like the double doors. But the people who work there are the most loving, kind, compassionate human beings.
Yeah.
And so to have that experience after this horrific birth and feeling so empty and depleted and like my soul had been ripped out of me, to then have that experience of these doctors and nurses who, they're angels. Like, I don't know how you work in that environment.
Yeah.
It's like being a teacher. It just takes a really special human to be able to do it. Seriously, shout out to all the teachers.
Yeah.
But yeah, like, I couldn't have been more grateful to have such starkly different experiences.
Yeah.
Right? Like, without that NICU experience, I don't know that I could have actually recovered from Joseph's birth, right? Because those folks held me in so much love, just like they were holding my baby in so much love. And I mean, I did not get what I needed after that birth. Like, I had to force them to let me leave the hospital. No one told me I had hemorrhaged, but I had. So I didn't even know how screwed up my system was. I ended up in the ER at the same hospital where our NICU was because I wasn't okay. It was just gross. It was just totally disgusting. Again, like, I didn't get those like formative moments. And I'm putting that in air quotes, like the formative moments, like the skin to skin and feeding my baby, being the first one to change their diaper, like those little things that like you expect after you've had a child that we know actually aren't so little, right? Like, and I was so afraid that like my children wouldn't develop properly because they didn't get skin to skin, and we wouldn't bond because there wasn't skin to skin,
Yes.
And it's just not true.
Right.
Is that stuff amazing and wonderful and probably magical? Yeah, probably.
Right.
But ultimately, nothing is wrong or broken or unfixable in my relationship with my children. They're still mine. And I didn't screw up.
Yeah.
And maybe bumping wasn't a good idea because Gosh, it could have been different if, my body had just waited for 2 days.
Maybe.
At the same time, like maybe it wouldn't have, and maybe it doesn't matter.
Right.
And so that's actually when you put the call out on the Facebook group, that's why I even wanted to share.
Yeah.
Right? Because if someone had told me that it was like that was all going to be okay, maybe I wouldn't have had to experience all of the guilt and the suffering that I experienced.
Right. So in the wrong intention, I guess, putting the emphasis on this immediate skin to skin and these things that we're trying to do to bring back like the most natural and the most physiologic way of coming into the world, we're trying it, I think, with good intentions to put the emphasis so that hospitals do skin to skin and they do delayed cord clamping and all that stuff. But in that way, we're putting possibly pressure on you or women who, when it doesn't go the right way. So one question I have is, I've always told mamas, if something were to happen at your birth that makes it so you don't get skin to skin and you don't get to do the first breastfeeding in the first hour, and if circumstances don't allow for that, that when you do get your baby, whenever that is, so maybe days later in the NICU, maybe hours later, whenever that is, that then you place the importance on skin to skin. So did anyone tell you that? Did anyone give you
no,
like a redo, No.
I mean, my doula tried.
Yeah.
But I think that also my emotional state was so terrible.
Yeah.
That it, like, I don't think I was going to hear it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does, for sure. So,
however, the medical staff did not.
Yeah. And
like, just to be very, very clear.
And they should. And that really irks me because I feel like the NICU should know better, and they should know that
but when you're actually dealing with like kids in incubators
yeah.
who are not even like existing without machines, and you're looking at an 8-pound baby going, why in the hell is this kid even in here?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, like, they had bigger fish to fry. Let's just be honest.
Yeah, that's true. But they also do know. They also for sure do know. The research on kangaroo care and skin to skin for NICU babies is amazing.
Oh, and they definitely, like, they afforded me all of that.
Yeah.
Right. But it was like, I had this idea that like right after my child was born, they needed to just be right on my skin.
Critical window, and they will never be the same again. And
yes, exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
And that's not true. So how did the recovery and the emotional aftermath of the second birth experience play out, like over the weeks and months? You said the baby was in the NICU again for 5 days, right?
Yeah, he was in the NICU for 5 days. I mean, I was just absolutely trashed.
Yeah.
So was my husband. When we finally brought our baby home, we ran over our cat.
Oh no.
Uh-huh.
Oh. Uh-huh. No.
Broke his ankle.
Oh.
Had to get him put back together.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Guys.
It just didn't stop. Like, so there was that. And honestly, like, my husband and I almost divorced that winter.
Yeah.
Like, we were both so not okay.
Yeah.
And so I actually, at that point, I decided to get on an antidepressant.
Yeah.
And an anti-anxiety medication.
Uh-huh.
That was relatively helpful. We went to marriage counseling, found something that we could do outside of our kids together that we had fun with. And it's actually really only been 2020 and now that I feel like I'm actually recovering.
Yeah.
Yeah. So right before Joseph turned 1, I called a friend of mine who's a shaman, and I said, I cannot celebrate this child's first birthday without getting rid of this crap.
Yeah.
I can't. Like, I don't know how to celebrate this child or this child's birthday.
Yeah.
With all of this.
Yeah.
It was wonderful. In 90 minutes, it was all gone.
Yeah, that's amazing.
All
So
of it.
yeah, tell us if you can, what's any of the most unhelpful things that anyone did or didn't do in helping you, to recover in your heart and your soul, you know what I mean? Not like physically, but
Right.
what was the most unhelpful? And then also on the flip side, obviously the shaman that you just talked about being the most helpful, but other things like what?
So I'll start with before I ever had birth. I never should have read Ina May's Guide to Childbirth.
Yeah.
It was a very bad choice. It just made me more angsty and rigid. So that was one, which isn't anybody but myself. The thing that was most unhelpful was after I had given birth to my first child and I was concerned about postpartum depression, because I have bipolar.
Yeah.
I was diagnosed with manic depression, which is now a subset of bipolar.
Yeah.
So I was very, very concerned about postpartum depression. When I brought that up with my physician after the birth of my first child, she actually prescribed me the one medication that I said I wouldn't take. So I was like, well, if that's what help is, I guess I don't need help. Just the absolute lack of communication post-birth. I didn't grow up in a house that sought medical attention. Like, I didn't actually understand the implications of hemorrhaging, right? I know what the word is,
Right.
but I didn't understand the implications, right? And no one took the time to educate me. I literally almost ripped my IV out of my arm to get out of the hospital to go to my child's bedside.
Yeah.
That communication simply doesn't exist in our medical.
At least it's not valued or taught or expected. And if you by chance get a nurse or a provider who does give you that, it is rare, and it is their individual choice to provide you with that, and it's not required. And it's so sad, right? That's a big gap that
it is.
Shouldn't
it's exist. A huge gap.
Yeah. But it does, right?
Yep.
So let's say, what is the most helpful thing that happened? I mean, you've mentioned a few, like sharing your story was helpful, meeting other women that you could.
I think really the most helpful thing was, or is to this day, the moms that I've become friends with.
Yeah.
Like, we all had little boys within 18 months of each other. They were all our first child. And I mean, 2 of them have moved, and I visited one of them across the country. Yeah. Like, these women they're the reason that I could raise my kids.
Yeah.
Because I found the most loving, kind, compassionate women who, none of us are moms the same way. None of us.
Right.
And yet we are friends and we love each other's kids. And we've created this like bond and this community.
Yeah.
That I don't know that I could have survived the first 6 years of being a mom without them.
Yeah.
Like, and I don't mean that figuratively. And that has been the most helpful thing, is just having that unconditional love of people who are in the same boat, who you can commiserate with them, but on the flip side, they'll also look at your child and be like, how beautiful is this kid? You know, like, where we can see the things for each other in our children that we just can't see because we're so in it.
Yep. It's so true.
And that to me, like, I think I need to write my friend who invited me to this mom's group a letter, because I don't even think that she knows how much just that like Facebook invitation impacted my life.
Yeah. How awesome. That's so great that she did that, and that you were able to find your village and your women who you can go through this with. Because really, we are not meant to do this on our own in our little house without support. It's not reasonable to expect that we can, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. We are with you. You are preaching to the choir, because that is our whole entire goal. We have a community on Facebook where you found the call out for the podcast, where there are women all over the world who are so different from each other and who support each other unconditionally. And that is really like one of our main, things that we're trying to do, is provide that support for people who don't have it. Like, I really hope we can have it in person, and I really hope we can physically hug each other. And I hope one day we can get back to that. And until then, though, we've got our virtual community, and it's not to be downplayed, It's so important. So, wow. Yep. So, do you have any final thoughts, anything you want to say that you haven't yet been able to share?
Can I read a poem?
Yes, please do.
Okay, so this is a poem that I've heard ever since I was a little girl. It's called Mother's Evening Prayer, and it's by a woman named Mary Baker Eddy. Oh, gentle presence, peace and joy and power. Oh, life divine that owns each waiting hour. Thou love that guards the nestling's faltering flight. Keep thou my child on upward wing tonight. Love is our refuge. Only with mine eye can I behold the snare, the pit, the fall. His habitation high is here and nigh. His arm encircles me, and mine and all. Oh, make me glad for every scalding tear, for hope deferred, ingratitude, disdain. Wait and love more, for every hate and fear. No ill, since God is good, and loss is gain. Beneath the shadow of his mighty wing, in that sweet secret of the narrow way, seeking and finding with the angels sing, lo, I am with you, always watch and pray. No snare, no fowler, pestilence or pain, no night drops down upon the troubled breast. When heaven's after smile, earth's teardrops gain, and mother finds her home and heavenly rest.
I love it. Can you email me a copy of that? And
I would love to.
Will include it with this podcast.
Cool. Candace, thank you. It gets easier and easier and easier every time I share this.
Yeah.
And it's such a cathartic experience. And so thank you for giving me the opportunity to do it.
You are so welcome. Happy to do that. And I know that not only is it therapeutic for you and for me, but for all sorts of nameless, faceless people that we don't know who are going to hear this. And all we're doing is saying, hey, you have a village, whether you know it or not. We're all here.
Thank you to you and your sister for continuing to cultivate this community. I have to say, the Natural Mothers Facebook group it feels like a really, really loving place.
Yeah.
And I really, really appreciate that, everyone feels comfortable and safe asking questions, whether they're medical questions or, hey, what essential oil do you use for this? Or, I went to my doctor and here's what I'm thinking. What do you guys think? And it seems like a really, really loving, caring community.
Yeah.
And I know I have felt grateful to be able to ask questions there before I make certain choices.
Yeah.
So thank you for creating that space.
You're so welcome. We work hard at it and we're happy to do it. So well, have a good day. And thank you so much for sharing. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Enjoy the rest of your day.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please take a minute to leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts and tell a friend. Visit naturalmothernetwork.com to learn more or get in touch with us. Thanks for listening and have a great week.